Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Fanadian here. I'd like to welcome you guys all to another video. And today I'm going to be breaking down the Miami Dolphins' current wide receiver situation. So, as a lot of you might know, today is July 1st, which means training camp is officially on the way. So, I thought it'd be fun to do a little series of videos where I just kind of break down a few of the different position groups on the team, where either there was a lot of discussion about them going into the off season or they had a lot of changes, and just kind of give my thoughts on them going into training camp, kind of just go over all the individual players, talk about who I think is going to make the team, and then just like some general thoughts on the end on the position group as a whole. So we're starting with wide receivers because at the end of the offseason, there was a lot of talk about the Dolphins wide receivers. A lot of people saying we need to upgrade the wide receiver position because in that last game, we were having a hard time just getting like six serviceable wide receivers on the roster. Now the situation has changed a lot where it's really hard to predict what six wide receivers are going to make the team because there's so many, right? Like I had a hard time fitting all the wide receivers on the screen right here for this video. So the situation has definitely changed and the wide receiver group has definitely improved quite a bit if you compare what the team has now to what they had in that Buffalo game at the end of the season. So let's just kind of go over all the players here. We'll just go in order on the Miami Dolphins website, starting with Lynn Bowden Jr. He was a rookie last year. They got in a trade for the Raiders. I think they traded them a third round pick and a linebacker for Lynn Bowden. He came in as a running back, and he didn't do too much at the start of the season, but slowly as the season developed, he got some more work. And in the last few games, he actually looked pretty solid, and he looked like he could be a starting slot wide receiver in the NFL. He also showed that he's a multi-use player. They can have him take carries over the backfield, and he can even throw the football because he did play some quarterback at Kentucky. Also on the roster, they got Robert Foster, who they signed at the start of free agency on a bare minimum deal. I feel like kind of known more for his return ability than his receiving work. Spent some time with the football team and the Buffalo Bills. Only played like a little bit with Buffalo, so mainly brought in as a depth competition guy. But word on the street is this guy really impressed in the mini camp. The thing about the mini camp is you can't really look too deep into the mini camp just because they haven't put any pads on yet, and you can't really know just like how these guys are going to play until you actually see them, in pads getting physical with each other. Now, going on here, we got Will Fuller. Now, this is the big addition to the wide receivers. This is the main guy who they brought in. They gave him the big 1 year, $10 million prove yourself deal because Will Fuller has been absolutely electric when healthy, but has had multiple injuries. I'm sure you've heard me say that multiple times if you watch my videos. Look at his stats last year. A lot of people are saying this was his best season: 53 receptions, 879 yards, 8 touchdowns. But like every other season he didn't make it through the full season. This time not because of injuries, this time because he got suspended for PEDs, which also means he is going to miss the first game of the season because of his suspension. So we'll have to see how that affects him. Some people are saying because he's already missing the first game, that's going to break the curse and he won't get injured at all. That's personally what I'm hoping, but I could see him definitely coming in here and posting up some similar stats for the Dolphins this season. Probably a bit better because I am hoping that he plays all the games here. It's just that I will get into something later when it comes to these receivers. Now we got Jakeem Grant here. Very, very controversial player amongst the Miami Dolphins because Jakeem Grant, when it comes to returning kicks, amazing, all pro, one of the best in the league. But when it comes to receiving, this guy just can't seem to catch any passes. So if this guy can just work on his hands, he can be great for the team, right? Like a Jakeem Grant, William Fuller, Jalen Waddle trio is one of the most explosive in the NFL. It's just that one of the key parts about playing wide receiver is you got to be able to catch the football, and that is still something that Jakeem struggles with, which really sucks because I really love this dude's like work ethic and personality. You could tell this guy is out there grinding, trying to get better, but I don't know. There's just something that just isn't quite working out for Grant, and he's never really gone past just being like a backup receiver. He's never been able to go out there and like be like a true like one or two or really put up some crazy stats. But every once in a while, he just makes one of these big plays because of his speed, where you just see the potential, and you're like, damn, if only he can just work on these few things that are just limiting him. So that is Jakeem. Next on to Mac Hollins, brought in last year as a more of a special teamser, I guess you could say. Depth piece, was signed to a minimum deal, re-signed with the team. Most likely, if he's going to be brought back, it's going to be because of his special teams play, not so much because of his receiving. He did have some nice catches for the Finns last season. He had that crazy one from Fitzpatrick on the, no look, getting his head ripped off pass, but he also had quite a few drops, which is something he is known for. Going down the list, we got Alan Hearns, one of the players that opted out last year, coming back. Alan Hearns is interesting because he had that one crazy year in Jacksonville where he went over 1,000 receiving yards, and then ever since then he's been very limited because of injuries and then opting out. So we'll see what happens with Alan Hearns. My thoughts on Alan Hearns is he is like a really solid like wide receiver three, and can't see him making the team based off that because his contract is really small, and I'm pretty sure the like amount of dead cap they get for cutting him is the same as the amount of money they'd save. So it's like you don't actually save any money if you do cut Allen Hearns, and definitely just even having someone like him on the roster is like really nice because we didn't even have like dudes who are solid wide receivers threes on the team, and you do need to have some of these dudes on the team because you can't be paying everybody wide receiver one kind of money. Next, going through the list, Kyle Loxley, brought in undrafted free agent, most likely going to spend his time on the practice squad, camp body, come in and compete kind of guy. Maybe if he goes Super Saiyan in preseason, he could earn himself a spot on the team. Kirk Merritt, undrafted free agent last year. Everybody thought this guy was going to be the next, Preston Williams for the team, but never actually got to see the field, which is just like a bit worrying for me because I feel like if you were going to prove yourself as a wide receiver on this team, you would have done it last year with all the injuries. Now, with all the other receivers coming in, it's going to be really hard for him to get a spot on this roster. But this dude does have a lot of great athletic traits. So if he could just start working on some of the other stuff, maybe we could see him, sneak in onto the roster. Or if there are some injuries, maybe we'll get to see him go in. But going to be interesting to see what happens with Kirk Merritt this year, just because there were quite a few Kirk Merritt truthers last year that thought this guy was just going to come in and completely save the Miami Dolphins receiving core. Now we got Devontae Parker. Now, personally, I am a Devontae Parker fan, but I know there are a lot of other Dolphins fans who are not, just because, there's a lot of people that think he's lazy. He's had a lot of injuries. There's a lot of Devontae Parker's non-truthers, I guess you could say, doubters. But even last year, everyone kind of dumps on him for a season last year, say he played bad. It wasn't too horrible, actually. 63 receptions, 793 yards, 4 touchdowns. Played almost in every single game, but played through most with a hamstring injury. We saw some games, like in this Jets game here, where he did play really good, where he was getting fed the ball. But it's just kind of after this is where we saw, that hamstring injury really kind of start to affect him. I will say one thing about the injuries is having more wide receivers on the team means that guys won't have to just put the whole offense on their back and just get fed the ball every single play, which means I feel like that should help with making less players get injured. That's probably a horrible way to word that, but what I'm trying to say is, the less of the load you have, the less chance you have of getting injured, the less wear and tear you're playing on your body. But everyone's hoping he could go back to his 2019 season with Fitz, where he had 1,202 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. That'd be absolutely amazing if he could do that. So I like Devontae. He's definitely staying on this roster. I feel like that's not even a question. He is going to be like the team's number one, like jump ball, big body wide receiver, contested catch guy. Jalen Waddle, the sixth overall pick. Really excited to see what Jalen Waddle does here with the team. Reunited with Tua here. Just him and Will Fuller are just going to be an absolutely electric duo with how fast they are. It's really going to change how teams defend this Dolphins team because if you don't have anyone back over top defending, Jalen Waddle and William Fuller are just going to completely bust the top off your defense and like gash you deep. So really excited for Waddle. Think that has the chance to be a great pick for the Dolphins here. Preston Williams, another interesting player. 2 years with the team. Both seasons started off looking really good. There's a lot of people that thought last year Preston Williams was actually outplaying Devontae Parker, but unfortunately, 2 season-ending injuries. This year three is going to be huge for him. If he could stay healthy throughout the whole season, I think he could really carve out a role for himself. But if he has another season-ending injury, that might be it for Preston. So we'll have to really see what happens with this guy. I'm personally rooting for him just because it would be a great story if this guy can actually become an elite NFL wide receiver. And the last guy on the list here is Albert Wilson. another opt-out player, was absolutely electric when he first joined the team in 2018 for those first like 4 games. Had that horrible hip injury, missed the rest of the season, most of the 2019 season, opted out of 2020, but he did restructure his contract, so they're paying him like barely anything to be on the team. And rumors out of minicamp are he is looking fully healthy and he is back to the old Albert Wilson. So very interesting to see how he does. I know there's a lot of people hyping him up this season, thinking he's going to be pretty good. So that's just all the wide receivers. So who do I think is going to make the roster? So first off, Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle. That's the easy three that everyone agrees on. After that is when you start seeing a lot of controversy. Not controversy, I guess you could see a bunch of mixed opinions on who's going to make the team. So let's just start crossing some guys off the list. So I'm going to say Kai Loxley and Kirk Merritt get cut and go back to the practice squad. You know, Kai Loxley, like I said, was probably brought in as a camp body. Kirk Merritt, if he didn't prove himself last year, I feel like he's going to have to go back to the practice squad this year and try again. I think Robert Foster probably goes back to the practice squad. I know some people are hyping him up, but I just think there's just not a lot of room for him on the team. And even though he can return kicks, there's a ton of other people on the team that can as well. And now this is when we get to the hard part, where it's between Albert Wilson, Preston Williams, Lynn Bowden Jr., and Allen Hurds kind of competing for the last 3 spots, because the Miami Dolphins brought 6 wide receivers into the season last year. They had 6 on the roster, so they might bring 7, but it is really hard to say. If I had to predict who the other 3 that would make the team are, I think Lynn Bowden as a rookie showed a lot of promise. I think they'll bring him back this year, especially because he is a multi-use player, which the Dolphins love. I think Preston Williams gets another go on the team. He helps bring a good variety of wide receivers to the squad, and I think he also has shown a lot of promise, and he cost the team barely anything. And for the last spot, if they bring 6, I think he goes to Albert Wilson. I think him restructuring his contract is what saves him, because they are paying him also barely anything, and I think he makes the team just because like salary cap reasons, and that is the main reason why. If they only bring 6 instead of 7 wide receivers into the season, Jakeem Grant probably gets cut because of how much they have to pay him. So it's mainly just purely off of salary cap reasons and what happened with COVID, why Jakeem Grant would end up getting cut. I think Mac Hollins, if he gets cut, I should mention, the NFL is still doing the thing where you have 53 players on the team, but you could bring 2 practice squad players with you and go up to 55 on game day. I think Mac Hollins is one of those guys just because of his special teams ability, and I think if he's on the practice squad, we don't really see him get sniped by another team. And yeah, so that's my thoughts on the wide receivers. Just looking at those 6 guys I predicted to make the team, way better than last year. If the question is like how much has the situation improved compared to last year, it's improved drastically. I've even seen like a lot of different articles doing rankings where they have the Dolphins receiving core in the top 10, and I think if they stay healthy, they definitely are. Even if they have a couple injuries, with the extra depth they have, I still think this is a top half receiving core in the NFL. One, I guess, bold prediction, I guess you could say, is I don't know if we're going to see a single receiver go over 1,000 receiving yards this season, just because I feel like the ball is going to get spread out so much. You also got tight ends like Mike Gesicki who are going to get a bunch of work, and we're going to be running a lot of RPOs and running plays, so some people might try to play down the receivers because they're not going to have the craziest stats, but I think that's just because of the way that the team works, and these guys are still going to be playing good for the team. And overall, really happy with the changes made to this receiving core. I guess you can't say it's a bit boom or bust because a lot of the players going through this list do have some sort of injury concerns, but it's kind of hard to hold that stuff against players because some guy could get hurt 2 years in a row and just come in the third year and have no injuries. And like, injuries just do happen. There's a lot of freak accidents that happen on the football field. It's a very aggressive sport where you have these like super macho men just going all out all the time, so things like that do happen, and it is hard to hold injuries against players. But my overall thoughts on this receiving core is it's a lot better. It's a lot faster. I'd say speed is probably the biggest strength of this receiving core. It's going to be hard for teams to catch up with these guys. And I'd honestly say depth is another big strength, which is something they didn't have last year. And I am super happy with what they have done with this receiving core coming into the season. A lot of just very young potential on the team with a couple more veteran guys like Devontae Parker who could come in here and kind of be leaders for the team. If I had to predict who the wide receiver one would be for the squad this season, I think Will Fuller is probably the safest pick, but there's a good chance it's Jalen Waddle just because of that Tua Alabama connection here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll stop rambling on here. That's the Dolphins receivers. If you want me to go over again who I think will make the team, it'll probably be William Fuller, Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Preston Williams, Albert Wilson, and Lynn Bowden Jr. And if they do keep a seventh, it's probably something where they're able to restructure Jakeem's contract. And Matt Collins, if they're doing the whole, you could bring 2 extra guys into a game, he's probably one of those extra guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like it if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more Dolphins content. And until then, thanks for watching, everybody, and hopefully I see you in the next video.